Today's episode is going to be a little bit different on the Fast to Heal Stories podcast. The podcast has been running almost 3 years now, which is crazy. It started in September of 2020. So I thought that this episode would be important or is important because a lot of things can change in 3 years, right? We evolve, we grow, we learn more knowledge. I never want to be that practitioner or teacher who just stays with status quo and doesn't change up what I am teaching, what my methods are, my strategies. I mean, I love to be on the cutting edge, especially in the area of metabolic health, because that's what I specialize in and help you to reverse. And there have definitely been some changes in the metabolic health scene over the last couple of years, as particularly in the area of nutrition and fasting. So those of you who have hung with me from the beginning or maybe you're a newer listener, but you've binge listened to a lot of episodes, or you've started at the early episodes. So, like I said, we're coming up on three years of podcasts. So we're in around the 140 episode range now, 150 episodes. Like, a lot of things can change in that time. So if you listen to some of those early episodes, that was when, those earlier episodes was when I was really struggling with insulin resistance and working to reverse that disease process, where now my insulin levels and my metabolic health, there are no there's no indication of irregular metabolic health, or I am very metabolically healthy is what I am wanting to say. And we know that 93% of adult Americans are not metabolically healthy, which is absolutely staggering. That's why I'm here. That's why I do this podcast. That's why I, run my courses. And that's what my courses revolve around, is getting the 93% of you who are not metabolically healthy the correct information to get you metabolically healthy. And I was there myself. I never struggled with a weight problem, a big weight problem. I mean, I had issues maintaining my weight, and it was really difficult, but I was never really overweight, but I still struggled with insulin resistance. So I want to just take this episode to run through the major areas in my life. And I think people get curious about that anyway, especially if you've followed me for a long time, or if you're new and you're just kind of like, who is this lady? What is she all about? And I want to look at the different areas of my life and just kind of let you know where I'm at and why I practice those particular things. Again, there will always be rhyme behind the reason of why I am implementing certain things, why I follow that my own self. I am very, very passionate about people's health and nutrition, and you living your best life, you being healthy, you not getting caught up in the sick care system, because that's exactly what it is. It is not a healthcare system anymore, because really you have to be sick in order to be seen by doctors in the conventional system. It's just how they're trained. It's just how it is. There's a lot of work to be done and a lot of things that need to be changing. But I've gone on my own in the last 5 years or so and turned away from that sick care model and really just tried to bring you, like I said, the cutting edge research of what's coming out in metabolic health. So you can be, there's only 7% of us right now who are metabolically healthy. Let's help grow that percentage. Let's not be a statistic in that 93% area. Like, that just makes me really sad. And another thing that makes me really sad is the health of our children. The health of our children is becoming disastrous. So we need to learn these things as parents and adults in this generation, so we can stop this madness, this metabolic mess when it comes to our children. That is a very strong passion of mine as well. So I'm just going to go through the different areas of my life, tell you a little bit about, why I'm doing things in that area, and I do want you to keep in mind that this is what works for me at this moment in time. And just the fact that I'm doing this follow-up episode shows you that things have changed a bit for me in the last 3 years. 3 years ago, I was more metabolically ill than I am now. Now, I don't have any metabolic illness. So things that I was implementing 3 years ago were to reverse a disease process that I was struggling with, where now I'm more in a maintenance area. And who knows what's going to change for me? I am 47 years old. I have a very regular menstrual cycle at the time that I'm recording this, but I'm getting to that age where I'm in perimenopause, like it or not. And just due to my age, like I said, I don't have symptoms of perimenopause. And I have a very regular cycle, but the time is coming and it probably won't be long for me where I might struggle with some more, some of those symptoms of less insulin sensitivity and hormones fluctuating and falling hormones. And at least I'm educated so I can recognize those symptoms and get a grasp on them and treat them before they become problematic. So I want to talk a little bit first about my nutrition. And you guys know I'm a registered dietitian. So this is a very, very strong passion of mine. Every podcast episode, we're going to be talking about nutrition and in particular, nutrition for metabolic health. We have been led astray in the area of nutrition for decades and decades about, eating all of these healthy whole grains and eating 55 to 60% carbohydrates throughout the day. And that is complete nonsense. And it's gotten us to this metabolic mess that we're in now. I'm not saying carbohydrates are innately terrible for you. The ones that are natural and are grown in the state that they're supposed to be stayed and are not altered by chemicals or processed in a plant, and it is not an ultra processed food, that is different. But you still don't want to eat so many carbohydrates that your body is always digesting carbohydrates. Like you want to be able to fluctuate from carb burning to fat burning, and that's called metabolic flexibility. So my nutrition at this point in time, I typically eat 2 meals a day, almost every day. When I was insulin resistant, I added in 24-hour fasts. So I only ate 1 meal a day, once, maybe twice a week. I didn't overdo it. Again, I didn't have weight to lose. I was more so trying to reverse that insulin resistance process so that weight maintenance would become easier and my day-to-day would become easier. And I would get rid of the symptoms that I had, which were feeling like I needed to eat every couple of hours, feeling like I needed to eat when I got up. I was a carb burner because I was eating a lot of carbohydrates. They were healthy, but I was eating a lot of carbohydrates. So I was not metabolically flexible. I would get hangry when I didn't eat. When I got up, I couldn't go more than a couple of hours. I was thinking about food all the time. And it was hard to maintain my weight. So I didn't have a huge issue, but I had a lot of symptoms of insulin resistance. So when I was in the disease reversal phase, I did do a couple of 24-hour fasts a week, at least one. And about every 2 to 3 months, I would do anywhere from 36 to 48-hour fast typically. So I would do one overnight fast every couple of months, not very often. Now, keep in mind, I had beginning insulin resistance. My insulin resistance, after even a couple of years of intermittent fasting and eating lower carb, my fasting insulin was at 10. This was last summer. And like I said, I've been doing this lifestyle for several years already. So I have no idea what my baseline fasting insulin was when I was still eating a lot of carbohydrates, eating all day, from the time I got up until at least dinner time. I wasn't a big night eater, but I ate very often throughout the day because I thought that was healthy. I have no idea what my fasting insulin was then. I wish I did. I didn't know to test for it because nobody tells you to test for that. But again, a couple of years in, I was astounded. I thought that this test was a fluke, and I thought that it was a misprint. I'm like, how can my fasting insulin be 10 after I've been doing this for 3 years, three or 4 years at that point? And just for reference, I like to see fasting insulin between 2 and 6. levels of 6 to 12-ish, somewhere in there is like starting insulin resistance, beginning insulin resistance. And if you're at a fasting insulin of greater than 12, that shows more significant insulin resistance that has been long-standing. Those are usually your, type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, fatty liver. Very difficult to maintain your weight, or obesity is usually when you're up into the levels of 12 and over. So I probably was over 12 at some point. I just was able to maintain my weight with the amount of exercise that I was doing. And I wasn't eating ultra processed food. I think that saved me. I was eating a lot of carbohydrates, but they weren't the ultra processed carbohydrates. So when I went low carb and I started to implement intermittent fasting, that helped me transition from burning carb all the time to burning fat, and to be able to do both. And that is your end goal. Your goal is not to be in ketosis all the time either and burn only fat for fuel with the byproducts of ketones. That is good. You want that sometimes, but that shouldn't be your goal to always be in ketosis. We should be able to cycle in and out. So my nutrition looks like 2 meals a day. You know that I target protein heavily. I shoot for 100 grams of protein in a day. I will disclose my height and weight just so that where I'm at. And I'm 5'5" and I weigh about 122 pounds. I did lose about 5 pounds starting this intermittent fasting lifestyle. I would go up to about 130 in the summers. I would always gain more weight in the summer. And I think it was because my eating window was just that much longer and I was up earlier, all of those things. But my goal is not to lose weight anymore. I'm very happy with where it's at. But when I was insulin resistant, it was usually more like 127 to 131. If it got to like 130 or above, I would be very uncomfortable. My clothes would be tight. I know that for a lot of you, you're like, oh my gosh, that isn't, if I could weigh 130, that would be awesome. But for me, it made my clothing tight. I always would start gaining the weight around my middle, and it would freak me out because I have a lot of family members who are overweight. And I thought, okay, here it is. Like, I'm not going to be able to maintain my weight anymore. And, I'm just going to be like the rest of my family. So thank God I figured out, how to treat insulin resistance and reverse it. So I target protein about 100 grams a day, 2 meals. My first meal is typically bigger because I'm just hungrier at that time of the day. And I eat a nice, nutritious, filling meal. I have at least 1 to 2 servings of fat in that meal, and I try to get some fiber. And that's usually non-starchy carbohydrates or a little bit of fruit. And that works for me. And remember, I have no disease process. If you are trying to reverse a disease, this is different. Like, you might need to stay lower carb. I would say on most days, I'm between 75 to 100 grams of carbohydrate a day. I don't count, but just doing the quick conversions in my head, I've been trained to spot how many macronutrients in our foods for 20 some years, as a dietitian. So I would guess I'm most days between 75 and 100. Sometimes I'm lower at 50, just with what I'm choosing to eat. And I'm certain there's days I'm over 100. But for the most part, that is where I stay. And I really target protein, because when I target protein, I feel good. I stay full. I sleep well. I just feel nourished. But of course, you do need some fat so that you have long burning fuel as well. So that is where I'm at with nutrition. The other thing that has changed a bit for me is my fasting regimen, just altogether. I used to wait until at least noon, sometimes 1 or even 2, to eat my first meal. And I have changed that because I'm a very early morning person. I'm usually up somewhere between 5 and 6 in the morning. Sometimes earlier, which is not very often. Sometimes I sleep, later. 7:30 is sleeping in for me. Like, if I can make it till 7:30, I'm like, whoa, that is so late. But anyway, I am an early riser and I get a lot done in the morning. And that is when I have high energy and I feel great. So, it makes sense for me personally, my body, my circadian rhythm, to eat earlier in the day. So now sometimes I eat around 9, not too often, but if I do like a heavy lifting or heavy strength training, my class is at 5:30 a.m. that I like to go to. And so, I'm hungry after that. And so I usually break my fast on the strength days between 9 and 10. Sometimes, depending on what I'm going on, the usual for me is 10 to 11, somewhere in there. I still don't like to eat really early in the morning, and my body's just not ready for it. So it's usually between 10 and 11. If I have some meetings or, podcast recordings or other things going on, it'll push till noon. 1 is usually about the latest I like to eat now, because I'm just more active in the morning. And then I've tried to, whenever I can, I know that this doesn't always work, you guys. In a perfect world, we would be able to say, oh, this is what I'm eating at this time, but it doesn't always work. So I like to eat an earlier dinner. I like to eat somewhere between 4 and 5 and then be done for the day. When I am on vacation or with other people and I have to eat at like 7 or 8 at night, I'll do it because sometimes you just can't get around that. But I don't like going to bed with that full feeling. I don't want to be like hungry when I go to bed, but I don't want to have that full feeling. I just don't sleep as well. And most people don't sleep well when they have a stomach full of food, because then your body's having to digest that all night. But I like to be done by 5 for sure. And again, this doesn't always work, but if I am going to do a 24-hour fast, which they're pretty irregular now. Like I don't do a lot of those, again, because I'm not into the disease reversal area. I'm just in maintenance. I like to fast lunch to lunch. Like I'll just not eat dinner and fast through dinner. And studies show that can be very helpful for a lot of people, because it's more so fasting with your circadian rhythms to fast through dinner rather than fasting through breakfast. And that is different from, when I started the podcast, when I wrote the book. My book was published in April of 2020. So a lot of literature has come out since then. And there was a comprehensive review done not too long ago of all fasting studies, which are not many because nobody wants to study fasting. There's no money in it. And nobody wants to study women because their hormones fluctuate so much. But there was a comprehensive review done on the few studies that we do have with fasting. And it was shown in many studies that if you can, cut your window off by like 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there, that people make better progress metabolically and reverse their disease when they don't eat late at night and when you cut off that window. And again, it makes more sense because we're active during the day. Our insulin sensitivity kind of peaks at midday. So that's when I like to have my biggest meal. So that's where I am at with nutrition. And again, this works for me if you're in a disease reversal process. You probably need to implement more fasting, some longer fasts, make sure you're nourishing well when you are eating. And you might need to cut those carbohydrates down lower too, like under 50 if you are in a disease state, especially, you're struggling with diabetes or fatty liver, PCOS. You probably need to take those down even further because your body is not utilizing carbohydrate well. You need to give it ketone bodies to just reverse that broken metabolic process, and that takes some time. So that's where I'm at with nutrition and fasting. So I did have somebody say like, oh, like I thought how often do you do 24-hour fast? I thought you did those pretty regularly. And that was from an earlier podcast from several years ago. So I have changed things a little bit, and I've changed the actual times that I'm fasting. And then I do want to talk about where I'm at with exercise. So I alluded to going to strength training, and I love strength training. I try to go at least twice a week. I go to a strength training class called Group Power, where it's all pre-choreographed and we work one muscle group per song, and it's with a group of people. That's how I do very well with strength training. I don't do it on my own because I don't work as hard. This is what works for me. So I go to a class, it's pre-choreographed. You put your own weight on, you adjust it your own self, and there's an instructor to lead you through the workout. And that way I know I'm getting a full body every time I go, and it's fun and the music's good. And I just have gone to that class for years. And you should switch things up and not do the same thing all the time. So in that class, they have different releases and different music and different choreography where you're doing different things and not doing the same workout all the time. So that's how I get my strength training. But you don't have to go to a gym. You can do it at home. You can get resistance bands. You can get weights. But the reason why I push strength training so much, especially for women, is we will lose muscle mass as we age if we don't counteract it. You can counteract that with strength training. I want to be clear about that. You don't have to lose all your muscle mass. You need to do strength training in order not to, though. And you need to hit your protein targets. So we need more protein as we get older, which most people are not aware of. We don't digest and assimilate it as well. We get lower stomach acid, so we don't digest it as well. So you need to, if you're in this perimenopause, menopause age group, you really need to target protein. You really need to get some strength training in. So you don't need to go to a gym. You can do it at home. You can look up videos. I mean, there's thousands of videos that you can do at home. Just get a couple of dumbbells, do it with your own body weight. There's plenty of strength training you can do with your own body weight without any kind of, you know, anything that you need in addition. And just do it a couple of times a week. The other thing about strength training is that it does increase your glycogen storage, which is the storage form of carbohydrates. So when you are metabolically healthy and you have more muscle mass, you can afford to eat more carbohydrate. Not that I'm promoting high carbohydrate, going to eat ultra processed crappy food, but when you have more muscle mass and you're metabolically flexible and healthy, you can afford to eat a little bit more carbohydrate because you have more glycogen storage. And so glycogen is, you know, that's just basically, I've said this many times on the podcast, you can think of it like little buckets all around in your muscle and in your liver. And those buckets are constantly filling and emptying, filling and emptying. And when you do a hard strength training workout and you build more muscle mass, you have more buckets to fill. And that is storage form of carbs. So if your buckets are always full because you eat so many carbohydrates, you're eating all day long and you don't exercise, those buckets are always full. So there's nowhere to put the carbs. So then your body has to convert it to fat. And that's not usually what people want. So that's where I'm at with exercise. And then I want to mention also, I used to be a big distance runner and I did races all the time. I've did so many half marathons that I don't even remember how many I've done. I've done 2 full marathons. My friend who I have always run with and trained with and did a marathon with asked me this year if I would do another marathon, and I told her no. Like I'm not susceptible my body to that anymore. And even half marathons, they don't thrill me anymore. Like I will maybe run once a week, short distance, 3 to 5 miles, somewhere in there, and that's enough. That is enough for me. It's too taxing on my body at the stage that I am at. And I don't want to be causing inflammatory processes in my body and raising cortisol because my body, I forget what doctor I heard on a podcast say this, but marathon runners don't expect to get ill, right? They don't expect to get cancer. They don't expect to get diabetes. They think they're the epitome of health. But when it comes down to it, it's basically like you're teaching your body to run from a saber-toothed tiger every day, like all the time. Like humans aren't meant to run 26 miles and to train profusely, especially at my age. So I have scaled way back on running and I really love walking. Walking just feels enjoyable to me now, and I walk quickly. It's not like I'm just lollygagging. But I love to listen to podcasts. I love to walk with friends. I just love to get outside and not like those long training runs. I dreaded those. Like who wants to go and run 18 miles on a Saturday morning? Like you kind of tell yourself you do, but no, I didn't. So I've scaled way back with that. And I really just try to do things that are enjoyable to me that are not going to raise my cortisol levels. And that's important for exercise. The next thing that I do want to mention again, because this has changed dramatically for me in the last couple of decades, is alcohol use. And I very rarely drink alcohol anymore. I don't want to say I never do, because I'm just not in that place yet, but it's very, very rare. In fact, we're halfway through 2013, and I think I've had 5 drinks this entire year so far in 6 months. And 3 of those were in one day when I was on spring break vacation with my son, who we were celebrating them all being seniors. And I went with a bunch of moms back in March. Since then, I think I've had 2 drinks in 3 months. So I just don't like how it makes me feel. I don't like that it interrupts sleep as you get older. It interrupts sleep even more as your estrogen levels fall, gives you hot flashes. I don't like the sleep interruption. It's just not worth it for me. I don't like I said, I don't get anything out of it. And for women, I know that you don't want to hear this, but there's really no healthy amount of alcohol that you can drink. There just isn't. Like all of those recommendations 10, 20 years ago by the American Heart Association saying, oh, a couple of drinks a week is actually helpful because it thins the blood out. Nope, like it's a toxic substance. We can't fool ourselves into thinking that a little bit is going to be helpful. It's not. Like I don't kill the messenger. That's just how it is. Like there's no healthy amount of alcohol, especially for women. Women metabolize alcohol differently than men do. So maybe men can get away with a little bit, but I honestly, I just think it's not going to serve anyone well. Like I've seen so much abuse of alcohol in, different friends and family members that I know that I just don't drink it anymore, hardly ever. But that's not to say I've always, I've always been like that. I mean, I drank way too much in college, and the culture in Wisconsin is very beer heavy, even though I've never liked beer. It's just very alcohol heavy. It's like you go out with friends, that's what you do. And for me, it's just all about who I'm with and the environment that I'm in. It's never like I am sitting at home and I just really want a glass of wine. Like that's not who I am, and I never have been. But certain people, it's like you get with certain people or in certain situations, and sometimes that changes. So that's just where I am at. And again, I can't recommend when people ask me like, okay, what's a healthy amount of alcohol? I'm like 0. Like that's just where I'm at, and that's what I recommend. Now, you have to make the choice. This is me. We're talking about what I do. You have to make the choice your own self. So I'm never going to recommend that you have 5 drinks a week. Like I'm not, because I want you metabolically healthy, and alcohol does not serve metabolic health. So I can't lie to you and just tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you the truth. So with metabolic health, it's definitely comes into play with fatty liver, obviously, because it's metabolized much like it takes the pathway most like fat, but it's a toxin. So you don't utilize it. And the other thing is it really messes with your blood sugar. And that's why, if you go to bed with too much alcohol, you wake up and you might be sweaty, you might be super hungry, you might, just feel like absolute garbage. I mean, there's the toxins that are in your system. There's the lowering of the blood sugar. There's a lot of different factors that come into play here. But what happens when you drink alcohol is it shuts off all metabolism of energy except the alcohol. So your body is like, holy crap, this is a poison. I need to get this out of my body. It's toxic. So it stops burning fat, stops burning carbohydrate to go deal with the alcohol. Alcohol, it has to burn that off first. So a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I actually have lower blood sugars when I drink alcohol. And that's because you're turning off carbohydrate metabolism and you're turning off fat metabolism. But what happens is once the the alcohol is metabolized, then your body has to switch back to burning carb or fat, whatever is, there. And if you've eaten a lot of carbohydrate with the alcohol, it burns the alcohol first, you see a dip in the blood sugar, and then all of a sudden you see a rise in blood sugar because now your body can go back and burn carbohydrate. So hours later are when you will see that blood sugar rise. And a lot of people don't put that together because it's several hours after they've drank alcohol. But that's why it just really wonks out your blood sugars as well. So I just don't advise it, but that's where I'm at. And then as far as sleep goes, I alluded to that a little bit, but that's just another area. And, this is me, but I like to be in bed, like reading a book by 9 o'clock. It's just my wind down. I don't like to look at screens after like 8 or 8:30. I'm not going to say I never look at my phone, but I'm not a big TV watcher. None of our family, like we rarely have the TV on in our house. It's just, I don't know. It's just, we've never been a big TV family. We'll maybe watch a movie once in a while or have a sporting event on. That's really the extent of our TV watching here. I very rarely will be on my computer after dinner. I have put those guidelines up for my own sanity with running my business, but try not to look at screens. I'm in bed and reading a book, a physical book, not on an iPad or some sort of device. I'm reading a physical book by 9 o'clock. And then that's just my routine. And I usually fall asleep by 9:30. And of course, that's not going to be the case with 9:30 or 10, I should say. That's not going to be the case every day if I'm traveling or, there's things going on. But I really try to protect my sleep as a woman in perimenopause. It's critical, it's foundational, and I'm an early riser. So if you're an early riser, you're listening to this, you probably are just like me, where that's your circadian rhythm. And if I go to bed at midnight, I'm usually awake by 5:30, 6 o'clock. Like every once in a while, I can put a sleep mask on or like a blackout mask on and get some more sleep. But my biological rhythm is messed up if I go to bed that late and I'm still waking up. So it's just not worth it for me. So I know for me, if I want to get my deep sleep in, I wear an Oura ring. And I know if I go to bed too late, I don't get my deep sleep. And I am suffering the next day. So that's my bedtime routine. If I have to be on my computer, I wear blue light blocking glasses. And I just really try to have the same routine every night. But if your sleep is not dialed in, you need to figure that out before you can really progress with reversing metabolic illness, because you're just going to be spinning your wheels if you don't have sleep dialed in. And again, I know I'm getting to the point where my progesterone and estrogen, testosterone are probably going to start to fall in the next couple of years. And I am ready for that. Like I know what to look for. I know that I can use, HRT, plant bioidentical hormone replenishment therapy if I need to. It's there for me. I don't need to suffer and have hot flashes and sleep like crap and, feel terrible going through perimenopause and menopause. So that's where I'm at with sleep. And then with stress, because I always am preaching about stress, like, right, we need to get our stress managed. And it's a hard one, very, very hard. Hard for me as well. We have 3 children. At the time of this recording, they are 20, 18, almost 15. And so they're self-sufficient. So it's different stressors. It's stressors of relationships and being off by themselves and going to college and, facing all of that, like big, huge life transitions for them. It's not the needy little kids anymore that suck all of my time and, energy, but it's just different. So there's always stressors. There's stress. I run my own business. I do have 3 contracted employees. But I what you see here, I do the vast majority. So, I have a business that I'm running full time. I try to keep up on relationships. I have had to put boundaries in place with my business because if you're an entrepreneur, I mean, you could work all day, every day, and things are still, there'd always be something to do. There's always updating to do. There's always, always something. I'm always constantly trying to get ahead. So I'm not as stressed, but just getting to the point of getting yourself ahead in a business is really challenging. So there's always something. I've had to put a lot of boundaries up. If you've listened to this podcast for a year, my Instagram account was hacked last July, and that changed a lot of things in my business. It changed my outlook on things. It changed, actually, like, my spirituality changed after that. Just, it's hard to put into words what that did. I don't want to say like like my whole business is wrapped around Instagram. But it definitely hurt my business big time because that's where the majority of my following is. And that's how I communicate with people. So when that was stripped away from me, that changed a lot of things and put a lot of things in perspective. And I've changed my business model. Since that time, I have changed courses, how I offer my courses and how I offer follow-up and all of that. Like, so many things have changed. But the spirituality portion of it, I will speak to that for a few minutes. I really had to take a hard look at, why, the reasoning behind. I'm a very strong Christian believer. And I do think that was God's intervention. Like, I was just burning myself out. I was on that application, that social media, too much. It was taking away time from my family. We were on vacation when my account went down, which was interesting. And I wasn't being present with my family. And I couldn't really do much about it when I was there either, because we had no Wi-Fi in the cabin that we were staying at. So all I had was my phone and trying to recover everything from a phone in the, kind of out in the woods. And it really put things in perspective for me. And since that time, I've just let God lead me and bring followers to me who will connect with what I am teaching and what my methods are. It was just a huge mind shift for me when my account went down. And I really just took a step back and I thought, like, I'm focusing on a lot of the wrong things here. Like, I am focusing on the number of followers I have and the number of interactions I'm getting on posts, where I do not focus on that anymore. Yeah, I still put out a lot of content, but I am focused at how to best serve you and to let God guide me in that service. Every day I ask him to guide me and guide me in a way that is going to help heal his people. So it's just been a total mind shift and a lot of spiritual growth. And I think everything happens for a reason. And since I have taken a step back and let that happen, things have changed profusely. And more and more people have come into my courses and my programs and have seen life changes for them. So that's been really wonderful. But I have had to put a lot of boundaries up so that I don't run myself ragged. I get my sleep, I eat well. I get daily exercise, if at all. It's very rare that I don't at least get a walk in, at least a half an hour walk. I have a treadmill desk. I live in Wisconsin. We have really harsh winters. I have that right in my office behind me, and I hop on that if I need to. So that's where I'm kind of at with all of the things, but things that have changed in my courses, because you may have listened to episodes where I was offering different things, or my course was called something different. And of course, that's going to change. I'm not going to sit still and offer the same course year after year, person after person, when there's new information coming out, and I need to do what's best for my students. So I now have 4 courses that I offer: a starter course, a jumpstart. I should say the jumpstart is first. Jumpstart, a starter course, the Insulin Academy, which is my highest level course to reverse insulin resistance. And then I do have a mealtime mastery course. If you kind of got the fasting thing and the whole metabolic health thing, you're just struggling with nutrition. Mealtime mastery is just about nutrition. So those are the 4 courses that I now offer. When you are in a course of mine or you sign up to be my student through any of my courses, then you can schedule mini sessions with me, which are 20 minutes. I used to do one-on-one sessions through Zoom that were an hour long, and they just weren't serving me or the person I was working with all that well, because I only had an hour. I couldn't teach nearly what I wanted to teach the person, even with the intake form and being able to, kind of prepare myself ahead of time. I just didn't feel like it was the best use of time. And so I switched to, take one of my courses, because then I know you're getting the education that I want you to get. And then after you implement what's in the course, whether it's the Jumpstart or Low Insulin Academy, then if you have questions with how to implement things or you need more one-on-one support, then you schedule a mini session with me. So that's how I do it now. I used to also offer personalized protocols, which were written 4-week protocols. And again, they got too time intensive. And I think people were expecting miracles from these protocols. Like I would write them out and spend a lot of time on them, but they weren't getting implemented the way I was writing them. And, life gets in the way. And I felt like there was just some disconnect with what I was writing for people, how they were implementing it, and what their expectations were. And they were very time intensive. So I no longer offer those. But the courses and the mini follow-ups are really how you can work with me now. And my students do fabulous. There's optional metabolic testing once you enroll in any of my courses, and the metabolic testing is sent via a home kit. So you don't have to do anything except fill out a form that I send you. If you want a metabolic kit, you can check fasting insulin, or you can check a complete metabolic panel, and you fill out a form, and the lab that I work with sends it to your home. You do a finger prick, you send it back. It's that easy. So that is involved. That's optional. It's an optional cost for you. You don't have to do it if you're in my courses, but it's an optional addition if you want metabolic testing. So that's where I'm at with all the things. So hopefully that covers questions that you have about, how I'm doing things in my life. Again, this was what works for me. So I don't want you to listen to this and, be in a state of being a type 2 diabetic on insulin and expect miracles, because this is my protocol that works for me for maintenance. So definitely get in touch and enroll yourself in one of my courses if you are struggling with any metabolic disease, so we can get it reversed, because it is reversible. Your doctor won't tell you that, likely, unless you're working with a functional doctor or an integrative doctor, but it is reversible, and I can help you do that.